Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be proving figures and you'll be able to work on 11.5. So today's students will be able to prove a figure by its characteristics. And so let's begin with some information about different figures. Squares have 4 congruent sides, meaning that they have the same measurement. They have 2 pairs of parallel lines, so the opposite lines are parallel to each other, and they have 4 90-degree angles. That means that the lines that are adjacent to each other are perpendicular, meaning they form 90-degree angles. Okay, 90-degree angles, so all 4 of them. For the rectangle, you also have 2 pairs of parallel lines. So that one, those opposites are parallel lines. I shouldn't use it like this because that forms an angle. So opposite form parallel lines. Also adjacent, same like the square, form 90-degree angles. Okay, and that's the case for all 4 angles. And opposite sides are congruent, meaning this is congruent to this one, this is congruent to this one. Okay, they have the same measurement. Now we know about the trapezoid. They have exactly 1 pair of parallel lines, and those are the 2 bases. They never meet. But we also have other types of special trapezoids, like the isosceles trapezoid. These 2 are congruent. Okay, that's very important. And then we also have the right angle trapezoid, meaning that this is perpendicular to this side, and that base is also perpendicular to this side. So those are characteristics that we can use, and we can prove whether they are either this, or this, depending on the types of information that we have that we can look. Okay, so it's important that we know this. So if you can take a minute to pause the video and copy this information. So right there, pause it so you can copy it. Okay, now I'm gonna move it up so you can have the rest of the information, and you can again pause it and copy it. Okay, so now let's look at this information right here. And so let me zoom in so that you can copy it, and then we'll work with it. So it says that we have a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides, but what we're going to prove is that the figure is a square. To the naked eye, it looks like it's a square, right? But how can you prove it? We're going to use these coordinates that we learned how to find them before. Point A is negative AA, point B is AA, point C is negative A, and then point D is positive A, negative A. Okay, so those are the 4 points that we're going to be using. And so we already learned that the slopes, it says you'll need to show 2 things. The slopes need to be perpendicular. Okay, so these should be perpendicular. This should be perpendicular. This should be perpendicular. Perpendicular means that they form right angles. We already know that if a figure is a square, then they have to have 4 90-degree angles. And they also need to show that they are the same length. So we're going to show the slopes first. And something that we need to know about the slopes. Well, you already learned that the slope is the change of y over the change of x, or rise over run. And let me share this information with you. For perpendicular lines, the slopes are opposite and reciprocal. Okay, so slopes are opposite reciprocals of each other. So that means that if one of the slopes for one of the lines, and it doesn't matter how it is, but let's say that one line has a 2/3 slope, or 2/3, meaning it rises to 2 and it runs 3, then the opposite is, if it's positive, then it's going to be negative. And reciprocal means that you swap the denominator and the numerator. So instead of 2/3, it's going to be 3/2. So negative, and instead of 2/3, 3/2. Okay. For a slope, let's say that one line rises 1 and runs 2. The other one is going to have to go down 2 and 1 to the right, okay? So opposite will be, instead of positive, negative. Instead of 2 or 1/2 is going to be 2/1, or just put it as 2, okay? When we wrap it, just put it over 1, but the opposite reciprocal will be -2. Somebody asks, how come you don't put the 1 in there? We never use a 1 as denominator, coefficient, or exponent, okay? In those 3 cases, we never use the number 1. Okay, what would be the opposite reciprocal of 8? Opposite is negative. Reciprocal will be, since we don't have a number in here, we know that it's a 1. So the 1 becomes the numerator and the 8 becomes the denominator. So again, when there is a whole number, put it over 1 and then you swap them. Okay, so this aligned with these two slopes will be, lines with these two slopes will be perpendicular lines. Okay, perpendicular lines. What about, oops, I gave that one up. So what about -5/7? Okay, if it's negative, the opposite is positive, and reciprocal of 5/7, it's 7/5. So positive 7/5. Now one that we're not gonna have, but you can just remember is 0 and undefined. Before we learned that the zero line is gonna be horizontal, undefined is gonna be vertical. So they are opposite of each other, and so therefore they're gonna be perpendicular. Okay, perpendicular. So take a minute to write that down. I will now pause the video and go ahead and copy it. Okay, let's proceed now with this information. We're going to find all 4 slopes of the lines to make sure that remember, to prove that this is a square, we need to know that the lines are perpendicular to each other. That means they form 4 90-degree angles, and that the lengths are the same. So for the slope, we're going to use the formula m is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And let's do first the slope for AB. We're going to do the slope for each one. And these should be opposite of each other, these should be opposite of each other, and so on. Okay, so y2 minus y1. So let's put the points in here. So let me use a different color. Negative A for A, and B is AA. So I'm going to put y2 minus y1, so A minus A, over x2 minus x1, so A minus from the formula, and then negative A from x1. These become, 2 negatives together always become the big plus, okay? And so that's going to be added, and so A minus A is equals to 0. A plus A is 2A. And 0 divided by 2A is equals to 0. Okay? Now we're going to do, that's the slope for this line. Now let's do this line. And this point is B, this point is D. So I'm going to use the coordinates for B, it's A. The coordinates for D is A, negative a. And so now I'm ready to use the formula. M is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And that will be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Notice how we go backwards, okay? So negative a minus from the formula a. Okay, some people believe that this is a negative. No, it's minus from the formula and then this is a. Now x is a minus from the formula and a. So in here I'm going to have negative a minus a equals to negative 2a over a minus a is 0. And so whenever we have 0 in the denominator, that's called undefined. Okay, we said that this type of slope creates this line, this type of slope creates this line, therefore they are perpendicular, and that means that I have a right angle in here. Okay, now let me do DC. Again, it doesn't matter if you put DC or CD, you're gonna get the same answer anyways. So D is a, negative a, and C is negative a, and so I go ahead and do the formula. M is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, I call it the jump of the dolphin. You know how one dolphin goes and then the other like shows about dolphins. Okay, and so it's negative a minus, and notice how in here is negative a again, so minus from the formula and negative from here. And for x is negative a minus positive a. Again, two negatives together become the big plus. And so a negative a and a positive a equals to 0. Negative a minus a is negative 2a. And anytime we have a 0 on the numerator, the answer will be 0. Again, these are opposite of each other because this is this line, the undefined is this. So now we can say that this is also a right angle because it's undefined and 0. Okay, let's do the last one. And we have AC or CA, it doesn't matter. The points are, for A is negative a, for C is negative a, and so I proceed with my formula, which is M is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Let's make a little song about it. Okay, so I start again, negative a minus a over negative a minus from the formula and negative a in here. Okay, the negatives become a big plus, and so now I get negative and negative is negative 2a divided by negative a plus a becomes 0. I can never have a 0 in the denominator, that's undefined. And so this is AC, the slope is undefined. This was 0, so that means that this is a right angle. And now I compare this that is undefined with AB, which was 0. They're opposite of each other, and that means that they are also perpendicular. Now let's prove that the